The cold November wind sliced through the air as Michael Easton stood at the corner of Maple Avenue and Jackson Street, his breath fogging up in front of him. He adjusted the straps of his backpack, weighed down not just by textbooks but by the suffocating dread of another day at Eastbrook Middle School. The street was quiet, lined with bare maple trees whose branches clawed at the overcast sky. A rusty sedan rolled by, its tires crunching the frosty leaves scattered on the pavement. Michael sighed and stepped onto the crosswalk, dreading the inevitable gauntlet awaiting him inside the school's brick walls. It wasn't always this way. There was a time, not long ago, when Michael loved school. He was the kid who got perfect grades, stayed late for science fairs, and dreamed of one day working at NASA. But middle school was a battlefield, and kids like Michael, quiet, awkward, skinny, were easy prey. He reached the school gates just as the first bell rang. The crowd of students funneled through the front doors. A river of laughter, chatter, and shoving. Michael kept his head down, hoping to blend into the tide. But he knew it was a futile hope. "Hey, Easton." The voice hit him like a slap. Michael's stomach dropped, and his pace slowed. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Johnny Sparks. Johnny was everything Michael wasn't. Tall, broad-shouldered, and brimming with the cocky confidence of someone who knew the world would always bend to his will. He was the star quarterback of Eastbrook's junior team, the kind of kid teachers loved and classmates feared.
Michael kept walking, hoping Johnny would lose interest.
"Yo, nerd!" Johnny's voice was closer now, laced with amusement. "I'm talking to you." Michael stopped, his grip tightening on the straps of his backpack. He turned slowly, forcing himself to meet Johnny's gaze. "What do you want?" Michael asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Johnny grinned, flanked by his ever-present entourage. Chase, a wiry kid with a permanent sneer, and Lucas, whose bulk made him look more like a linebacker than a middle schooler. "What do I want?" Johnny repeated, his grin widening. "I want to know if you've got lunch money, or do I need to remind you how this works?" "I don't have any," Michael lied, his voice trembling. Johnny stepped closer, towering over him. "Oh yeah? Let's see about that." Before Michael could react, Chase grabbed his backpack and yanked it off his shoulder. The zipper burst open, spilling books and papers onto the asphalt. "Hey," Michael protested, bending down to gather his belongings. Johnny's foot came down on his notebook, pinning it to the ground. "Oops," he said, feigning innocence. Chase rummaged through the bag, pulling out a crumpled $5 bill. "Look what we have here," he said, holding it up like a trophy. Michael's face burned with humiliation. Around them, a few students stopped to watch, their expressions a mix of amusement and pity. "Come on, man," Michael said, his voice breaking. "That's my lunch money." Johnny smirked. "Guess you're skipping lunch today." He plucked the bill from Chase's hand and stuffed it into his pocket. The trio turned to leave, laughing, but not before Johnny gave Michael one last shove. Michael stumbled, falling to his knees. His hand scraped against the rough pavement. But he didn't cry. Not here. Not in front of them. The crowd dispersed, and Michael stayed on the ground for a moment, staring at his torn notebook. His chest felt tight, his breaths shallow. What me?" he whispered. Why is it always me?" Later that evening, the small 2-bedroom apartment Michael called home was quiet when he returned. His mom was in the kitchen, humming along to an old country song as she diced vegetables. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, glancing up as he walked in. "How was school?" "It was fine," Michael lied, kicking off his sneakers. He didn't want her to worry. She had enough on her plate, working 2 jobs to make ends meet after his dad left. "Dinner will be ready in an hour," she said. "Go do your homework." Michael nodded and retreated to his room, a cramped space with peeling wallpaper and a single window overlooking the fire escape. He dropped his backpack onto the floor and sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the blank wall. The humiliation of the day replayed in his mind over and over. Johnny's grin, the laughter, the sting of the pavement against his palms. He opened his notebook, flipping past equations and half-finished essays until he found the last blank page. Grabbing a pen, he began to write, his hand trembling with anger. "No one will ever push me around again." The next day, Michael walked to school with a strange sense of clarity. He'd spent most of the night lying awake, replaying the scene in the parking lot. Each time, he imagined a different ending, one where he fought back, where Johnny was the one on the ground. By the time the school came into view, Michael had made a decision. He wasn't going to let this happen again. He entered the building just as the second bell rang, slipping into homeroom and taking his usual seat at the back. He could feel the stares, hear the whispers. "Isn't that the kid Johnny shoved yesterday?" "Yeah, heard he didn't even fight back." Michael ignored them, staring straight ahead. The day passed in a blur of lectures and notes. At lunch, he ate alone in the corner of the cafeteria, his head down. But he wasn't hiding. He was planning. When the final bell rang, Michael lingered in the library, waiting until the hallways were nearly empty. He wasn't afraid of Johnny, not anymore. As he stepped outside, the cold wind hit him like a slap. He spotted Johnny and his gang near the bike racks, laughing and passing around a cigarette. "Hey, Easton!" Johnny called, his grin predatory. Michael didn't flinch. He walked straight toward them, his heart pounding but his steps steady. "Well, well," Johnny said, stepping forward. "Back for more?" Michael stopped a few feet away, meeting Johnny's gaze. "Leave me alone," he said, his voice steady. Johnny laughed. "Or what?" Michael didn't answer. He swung his backpack with all his strength, the metal buckle catching Johnny's square in the jaw. Johnny staggered back, clutching his face. "You little... wham!" Before he could finish, Michael swung again, this time aiming for his stomach. Johnny doubled over, wheezing. Chase and Lucas hesitated, looking between Johnny and Michael. For the first time, they didn't look amused. "You want some too?" Michael said, his voice low. They shook their heads, stepping back. Michael turned to Johnny, who was sprawled on the ground, groaning. "Stay away from me," he said. And then, for the first time in a long time, Michael walked away with his head held high.